Do we really want revival, or do we just say we want revival? We look at what happened at Asbury and everyone's like, you got to go to Asbury, you got to see what's going on. It's wonderful. I'm very thankful for that. And I hear a lot of people being like, well, why not movement here? Can we see movement here? I felt the exact same way. But then I have to check my heart and say, Matt, are you really ready for what revival actually entails? Revival entails confession. Revival entails days and hours of prayer and intercession and worship and praise. It requires transparency. It requires vulnerability. It requires taking things in the darkness and moving them into the light. Is that really what we want? Do we want to see revival of our hearts, or are we more addicted to the comfortability that we have of doing things the way we've always done them with church, which is very safe, very protected, very insulated? There's a lot of motivation to keep it that way. And maybe that's the reason that revival is far from us, is because we want the excitement. We want the feeling. We want to feel the presence of God. We want to feel like we're in the middle of something special. But guess what? All of that's about us. I want that. I want revival, but why do I want revival? Is it because I want to feel the very presence of God? And if I'm being really honest, yeah, I want to feel that. I want to see God move. I want to see God work. I want to be in the room and feel the weight, the kavod, the heaviness of God, the glory of God. Sure, 100%. But that's still all about me. You see, revival's not going to happen until we make it all about Him. It's like we want revival, but we don't want to disciple anybody. It's like we want revival. We don't want to spend 30 minutes a day in prayer. We want revival, but we don't want to get in the lives and messiness of people. We don't want to hear about their sin, about their addictions. No, we don't want to get into all that. We don't really want to know our neighbor. We want revival, but we maybe don't even really want to know God, because when we really get to know God, it changes everything. And maybe we're not really ready for that. Not so sure we're ready for what revival requires. If you really want revival, we want to see you praying. If you really want to see revival, we want to see you making disciples. If you really want to see revival, you're going to have to go in deep. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And that's going to mean that we got to put everything on the table. Nothing's non-negotiable. God gets to be in charge of everything. And if we are not prepared for that, I'm not so sure that we're prepared for revival, which is such a shame, because there could be so much good that could be done if we would just prepare our hearts for revival and be faithful to what we already know to do. That we say He is to be glorified, and for Him to be glorified, that means that we're going to worship Him. That means we're going to pray to Him. That means we're going to pour and confess our sins out to Him. That means we're going to be authentic and genuine and transparent and vulnerable. And it's going to kind of stink from a fleshly sense, but not from the spiritual sense. Because just like Isaiah 6, when you come into the throne room of God, the presence of God, the weight of God, the glory of God, the splendor of God, the sins just start spilling out. We start confessing what it is that's going on. Do we really want revival? Or are we more protective of our own selves that may well be preventing revival from taking place in the first place? Are we willing to invest ourselves into what is required to see revival happen? So if you look at revivals around the world, there's often 3 stages to what happens. And there's not a mathematical formula. I'm not advocating that. I'm just saying that if we want to see the kingdom grow, churches planted, that starts with disciples made. And disciples made, a revolution of disciple making, is going to start with a prayer movement, a confessional movement, a vulnerability movement, where we are so moved by the love of God for us and the glory of God, the kingship of Jesus, that we submit and surrender everything to Him with each other. And so when we say we want revival, what is it that we're really saying that we want? I think it's very important for us to consider that, because it gets to the heart of the matter of what's really going on inside us. Am I just saying I want things to feel better or feel good or feel like I'm part of something? Often, yeah. If I'm being really honest, that's really true. So then I have to wrestle with, why don't I want revival for the real reason? And start forming my heart around that motivation, to exalt God, to humble self, to surrender in all things, to give God constant praise, constant worship, devotion, and prayer. And we cannot orchestrate revival, but we can start by dedicating ourselves to prayer and to increasing our love for God and for neighbor. And I know no better place to start than that. So if you want to see a movement and revival, it almost always starts through discipleship, and that almost always starts through prayer. So we can do that. We can begin to pray. We can begin to make disciples. And then we just have to see if in our faithfulness we see God move, if in our confession, if in our worship, if in our vulnerability, if within our transparency and authenticity, within our devotion, we might well see the move of God. But it's going to be ugly and beautiful at the same time. We're going to hear some nasty things, nasty sins, even our own nastiness. When you are so consumed by the presence and the power of God that to expose those things into the light only brings God more glory rather than more shame amongst the person who's confessing it. So I want revival, but I want revival for the right reason. How about you? I'd love to hear from you in the comments. I'd love for you to hit like on the video. Y'all have a great day. Praying for revival. I'm praying for it daily, and I hope that you'll join me in that prayer to pray for revival every single day. Thank you so much. Y'all take care.